is to create a space that allows some of our younger generation to be able to do this. I mean, the median age, which is essentially the average age in this country, is, according to the last census, is 20.1. Okay. So we have an incredibly young population. And the question is that given the number of people who are in school, the number of people coming out of university, are we, one, creating enough opportunities for them to take advantage? More importantly, are they coming out with the skills that will best equip them for life? And the extent to which I can play a small part in that, I guess that's really what the next phase of my career is. Right,
okay, so to start with, Mr. Agyare, how would you describe what you do to a first-year university student? What do you do?
What do I do? I, myself and my partners run an investment and advisory company. So we have two strands to that. On the one hand, we are continuously looking for opportunities where we can invest or co-invest with smart entrepreneurs, or we can take advantage of essentially situations that we leverage our expertise of. So if we see an opportunity, we think there is money to be made, we'd like to ethically and sensibly and responsibly invest in it. The second piece is the extent to which we have investors who are looking to come into Ghana, or we have companies, and Africa for that matter, and we have companies in Africa who are looking to raise money internationally. We have a team of people who are consistently looking to help companies put themselves in the best possible shape to be able to raise money internationally, or international companies who are coming in to Africa, help them get the best value for money.
What has driven your investment decisions over the years?
I guess what drives it is the ability to spot an opportunity and our ability to generate the sort of returns that our investors are looking for. And that's really, been about that. We're not necessarily focused on the sort of social impact type of investing. We're really much more focused on the monetary side of things. So if there is a return to be made, then, and we think it can be done responsibly and ethically, then we'll do it.
I know you did mathematics, you've got a mathematics background, and that's what informed your first job, having been the first African to have traded on the London Stock Exchange. What do you think has brought you this far? I know you attended University Primary, you went to Achimota, and then also you went to the University of Ghana. What do you think has brought you this far?
I think the first and most important thing that's brought me this far is luck. I was in Legon 83 through to 86. We had the Aluta in 84, where the universities were shut down for 9 months, and a lot of us left the country to try and start careers and then came back to finish off. I think finishing in 86, 87, 85 through 87 were particularly challenging years for graduates. The economy was not in a particularly good shape. There were very few jobs. And a large number of us at the time, we had to live. So, I mean, those are the days of even Rawlings chain, if those of you who are old enough to remember. It was almost no food sometimes. So I was fortunate enough to be able to leave the country. And literally, I left the country, very little money. I was working in the equivalent of McDonald's at night and looking for jobs during the day. And I so happened to chance across an advertisement for a financial services company who was looking for people who were strong in mathematics. And they had a particularly challenging entrance examination. But, my training at the University of Ghana under Professor Champong, may he rest in peace, who was a mathematical physicist and one of the leading mathematicians in the world, and I trained under him. And the spirit of knowledge and strength infused in me enabled me to pass that exam, and that's really how I began my career on the London Stock Exchange.
So the issue of joblessness has been an age-old problem here in Africa and in Ghana. So do you think that if you had stayed in this country, you would have been where you are today with a background of mathematics?
And I think that, the choice of mathematics at the time for me was one because I left university in 96, 30 years ago. And those days it was prescribed that if you went into engineering, you became a doctor, you became a lawyer. And I wasn't at the time quite ready to pick a profession. And so with my thinking, mathematics runs through everything. And there are very few jobs that you can't do if you don't have a strong mathematical background. And that is why I chose it. What would have happened had I stayed behind, I don't know. I have lots of very colleagues who are in very strong and powerful positions who stayed and it was just a choice that I happened to make, and I was lucky enough to be able to take it at the time. So I don't think that I wouldn't necessarily be in the position that I'm in today, but I would have arrived at this particular destination with a very different skill set and probably on a very different journey.
Do you regret traveling outside the country?
Not at all. I mean, I think it's, you know, a nation is full of different people with different experiences, and I think life is what you make it. And I gained a set of experiences. I was in a position where I was able to travel a lot. I was in a position to learn and be mentored by some incredible people. But they're different experiences to those who maybe, and I spent most of my career in the UK, even though I traveled around a lot. Some people went to the US, some people went to Australia, and some people stayed here and had life experiences with some incredibly, you know, powerful people. I'm an avid reader, for those of you who know me. And you know, right now I specialize in collecting the books of some of the older generation who are here. I just finished Samuel Kujutu's book, which is fascinating. And they, you know, there are a lot of people who lived in this country most of the time who had wonderful careers. And I'm trying to relive and understand their lives through the books that they've written. So it's just a different experience.
We're going to come back and talk about investment, and it's an area which you specialize in, the derivatives market, you know, the futures market and whatnot. We'll come back and talk about that. But you, to coach you, you once said that, you know, one of the biggest challenges confronting Africa is project management. And I know project management is a course that a lot of universities are taking up today. When you go to Legon, a lot of these universities today, project management is a major course being undertaken at the graduate level. Is it time for graduates to begin to look at particular courses, you know, that they do or take up in schools?
I mean, I think the educational system in this country is a whole different debate altogether. I mean, Achimota Speaks had a very interesting debate last week led by Professor Agyare, and a number of very prominent Ghanaians made comments. And I think one of the comments made by Patrick Iwa was about what we teach our people. And from an 4.5 million young kids going to primary school, about 2.5 million of those graduate and go to secondary school. And about 200,000 of those go to university, 100,000 into state schools, and about 100,000 into private schools and different colleges. So not everybody gets to go to the top of the food chain when it comes to university. And for those 4.4 million who leave formal education at some point in time, for those who leave between primary and secondary, the BEC results, you know, 28% pass rates. Effectively, we're saying that 70% of our kids are leaving school who are functionally illiterate, which is you know, we're building a house on quicksand. Now, as far as, you know, choices that people make about going to college, and I think it's really about what is required of you. I think everybody needs a basic education, but on top of that, I think you need to go and acquire skills which are need by the nation. One of the most important things is that the state isn't going to be able to employ everybody. The state employs about 1 million people at the moment, and I don't think it can afford to employ many more. You get the sense that, you know, in the current environment, it'll be when people leave, then people become employed. So I think anybody coming out of the graduate system at the moment has got to have one eye on having to work for themselves and building a career around themselves. And in that instance, what is it you've gone to university to do? Even if what you're doing doesn't allow you to start up on your own, these days with online courses and, you know, there's just a wealth of knowledge out there that you can acquire to help support or bolster the course that you're taking at the moment. I don't have a prescribed idea as to what people should be learning. I mean, you know, we can get caught up in the whole technology bars and setting up an app and this and that, but the reality of the situation is that you have to play to your strengths, you have to play to the environment that you're in, you have to play to the relationships that you have, and you have to use the skills that you've got to try and create a niche for yourself, which allows you to survive.
You're still watching Time with the Captains, your monthly business mentorship program, live here on TV3. We're streaming live on Facebook as well. You can share with us your views, comments, and suggestions on today's program, and we'll be glad to read them out to the rest of the world. We're joined also by our audience, students from the Wisconsin University as well as Zenith University College. We've also got representatives from some investment banks in the country. When we return, they all get the opportunity, the students will get the opportunity to ask questions of you. And Mr. Agyare, when we return, I'll share with you the latest Pulse Africa report, which indicates that economic growth in Africa is rebounding. It suggests that growth is going to reach 2.6% in the year 2017. But there are a few challenges. It talks about investment growth having declined from 8% in 2014 to just about 0.6%. We'll find out from you what that means and what the future holds. You're right here on TV3. We're back shortly.
The Gillette Blue 2 has a water-activated lubristrip, giving you a clean shave with fewer nicks and cuts. Upgrade to Gillette Blue 2. Gillette, the best a man can get.
Welcome to Ghana, a place with rich and authentic people who show their can-do attitude on a daily basis. Ghanaians have enjoyed Malta Guinness since 1989, and for good reason. Made from high-quality natural ingredients that are locally grown by Ghanaian farmers, Malta Guinness is specially brewed to give you the nourishment you need and a great taste you love. Malta Guinness, let's go!
Agyare food supplement to improve urine flow in men. If you're so frequently, no more straining in urination.
Some few months ago, life was very tough for me as a man. I had a problem with urine flow. The urine does not flow the way I wanted. My bladder is often not completely empty. Sometimes I just embarrass myself. Until I was introduced to Prostacure from Medimosis Prostate Center.
Prostacure from Medimosis Prostate Center is a well-formulated food supplement acclaimed worldwide to improve urine flow. Now available at all pharmacies, filling station shops and shopping centers nationwide. Contact the Accra and Kumasi branches with the numbers on your screen.
Visit our new branch in the AESL building, opposite Ministry of Roads and Transport, near Pension House, Accra.
Prostacure food supplement improves urine flow in men.
The Gillette Blue 2 has a water-activated lubristrip, giving you a clean shave with fewer nicks and cuts. Upgrade to Gillette Blue 2. Gillette, the best a man can get.
All right, so you're welcome back to Time with the Captains, your monthly business mentorship program live here on TV3. Tonight, our audience constitutes students from Wisconsin University College as well as Zenith University College. We've also got bankers here with us, investment bankers who are here with us for the very first time. And just to inform you, those of you watching us at home, that we're streaming live on Facebook. We're also live on TV3. Already we're getting lots of your comments coming in. Just to share a few with you, Imurana Mohammed says, I'm watching live from Germany, Hanover. It's an interesting subject. Thank you. This one from Isaha Kumama says, also watching live from Kumasi, and I'm enjoying the speaker. Prosper Anakta Khan says, I'm watching live from Kumasi. I'm enjoying the show. It's really educative. Also, this one from Boaben Emmanuel says, I'm watching live from Takwa, and I'm enjoying the speaker. Thank you very much. You can also log on to our Facebook page. We're streaming live on Facebook, and share a comment or two with us on the program. Mr. Agyare, just before we went on the break, I was talking about the latest Pulse Africa report by the World Bank, which indicates that economic growth in Africa is rebounding and is likely to reach 2.6%, which is quite better than what happened last year, just about 1.8%, and that was the lowest in over 2 decades. Interestingly, or however, investment growth has declined from 8% in 2014 to about 0.6% in 2015. What's the challenge, and how do we attract a lot of private sector investment into Africa?
I think that those numbers mask some structural, I guess, issues with the way they're calculated. The two largest economies in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, which are Nigeria and South Africa, are going through periods of incredibly low growth. I think the expectation is that in a country, our country, Ghana, will grow at somewhere between 6 and 8% this year, which is significantly higher than we've seen in the previous year. And some of the issues that surround investment is the fact that we have such a high interest bill. I think 2016's interest payments total somewhere in the region of $2.5 billion, when capital investment for the country was $1.5 billion. So anything that you can do to reduce your interest bill is incredibly important, and I'm sure you've all listened to the recent controversy about long-term bonds and disclosures and all that. But I think, the only thing to say about that is that if you can reshape your debt profile and bring some certainty and reduce the rates to it, you create the space to allow the private sector to come in and borrow. And what you've seen more recently is that short-term rates have fallen significantly, which means that if you're running a business, it's now much cheaper to borrow in order to be able to get that done. And it's the remit of those who are running the country to ensure that the government continues to do what it should do, which is facilitate private sector development and growth. And that's one of the things that I think we need to get back to, is the fact that and these are very personal views, I believe that the government is a facilitator. I don't believe the government should be running things. I think the government should create
an enabling environment.
Yeah. And a lot of that is as I said, I read a lot. I'm a historian. If you go back to even pre-colonial times, if you think of our traditional systems, you had a chief with a bunch of elders, and we still have a chief with a bunch of elders who opines over disputes in a public forum, and that has morphed its way into the judiciary. But within the traditional setting, the chief actually never ran or owned things. He issued concessions, he taxed them, and he used the revenue from taxes to provide infrastructure and safety for the people. And that's essentially what I believe we should be striving for, not somebody else's political system to come and put in here whether it's good or not. But we had a perfectly good system, before, the colonial times, and that was what we should aspire to. And if you believe in the center-right mentality, which is a facilitating mentality, then I think that a government who is pushing towards that, but at the same time not forgetting the fact that we have a huge social responsibility, because not everybody can access systems, so you need to provide a safety net, and that is important. And I think what you're going to see over the next few years, or I hope this government is going to focus much more on creating the fiscal space to allow the private sector to make doing business easy, to make it more transparent, and hopefully over time to reduce interest rates, which allows all of you to do your startups, to raise your capital, and to become the next.
Well, already we are seeing a cut down in some taxes, and I'm sure this particular one will interest you, the capital gains tax, which was imposed but has now been repealed. I'm sure it comes to you as great news for somebody who invests in exchanges across Africa.
Well, I think at a previous public forum where I spoke, the concept of you have 100 Ghana cedis, and if you buy a bond, you don't pay any tax on your interest, but if you buy a share, that you have to pay tax on your gain, to me forces people into to make decisions and choices not based upon how good the investment is, but based upon the after-tax return on investment, and that isn't right. Not for now, maybe later. But I think for now, when you're trying to encourage people into the capital markets, when you're trying to encourage people to invest in equity and not just bonds, then I think that capital gains is a step too far, a little too early.
Boabeni Manuel says, I'm watching live from Takwa. Abeku Yali says, I'm watching live from Circle. A very good topic I need at this point of life. And Amaku Gilbert says, I love watching Time with the Captains. Wonderful program. I'm going to give you an opportunity to you also, our audience, to pose your questions. Students from Wisconsin as well as Zenith University College. If you've got a question, kindly put your hand up. We'll recognize you so you pose your question. Who's going to do the first question? Great. You mention your name and then you pose your question.
Good evening, Mr. Agyare.
Good evening.
Okay. Please, my name is Irene Tiwa Sariabwa. I'm a lecturer at Zenith College. I lecture entrepreneurship. And I like what you said when you said that students coming out of the university now should look at building a career for themselves. Because it's important that we know that the government cannot pick all of us, so we have to look at ourselves. I want you to tell us from your own personal experience, what gave you a competitive edge to stand out? Was it your own strengths or your passions, or you had some particular traits that gave you an ability to stand out and be a success as you are, so that we can also learn from where you started and also stand out? Thank you.
We'll take 2 more questions. Great. Your name?
My name is Sydney Okafo, and I'm from Zenith University College, level 400.
Level 400.
I'll probably be asking a series of questions tonight, but perhaps the most important is, what is the underlying philosophy that guides you as an investor in making a choice for where you want to invest and what to invest in?
Great. Final question for this round.
My name is Pep Ujima Boynok, also a student of Zenith University College, level 400. My question is to you, Mr. Tutu Agyare. You, from what I was reading on Google about your profile, it said you started your career from the London Stock Exchange floor. So the question is, assuming you started from the Ghana Stock Exchange floor, do you think you would have gotten to the point you are today in life?
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Jerry.
Okay, I guess there are sort of 3 questions there. One is, what guides my investment decisions? And I think it was Mark Twain who made a quote, and more importantly, Charlie Munger, who is Warren Buffett's right-hand man, echoes a philosophy that I 100% believe in. He who does not read has no advantage over he who cannot read.
He who does not read
has no advantage over he who cannot read.
Okay.
I read all the time. I read and I read and then I read some more. And it is because I read that I believe that my edge is, because I'm constantly reading, I'm constantly looking for opportunities, and within that context, you tend to see things that others are not necessarily looking at closely. A lot of what we end up investing in is not necessarily because it's the smartest idea around, but it's because it's an overlooked idea, or it's one that other people haven't focused on, or it's one that isn't being executed as well as it has been elsewhere. And so we pick from one place and we reintroduce it somewhere else. So for me, when it comes to looking at opportunities, and interestingly, you know, our most recent investment is actually in a farm. We've just invested in a farm which exports. And we've just finished our first cycle of exports and just signed another contract to do another series of exports. And the reason we invested in a farm is, one, very few people are doing it. And this is before the new investment in agriculture, but we invested long before that. In an environment where the CDs has been depreciating, if you are investing in CDs and you're exporting in foreign currency, you have a natural hedge, and so your returns are there. And then finding the right group of people who are focused and disciplined and diligent, who will actually live on the farm and produce the sort of returns. And that's why we made the investment. It's not a particularly crowded space, and we found a great team of people who we could work alongside. So the ideas and opportunities come not because I wasn't looking for a farm. We just happened to come across a group of people, come across an investment idea, and the stars were aligned. In terms of, you know, what we're looking for, it's all about returns. It's all about returns adjusted for the risk that we're taking. We are relatively agnostic. We have investments in a document storage business. We have investments in a fintech company. We have investments in a property company. We're looking at a range of different investments. It's all about the returns adjusted for the risk that we're taking. And the risk that we're taking is really how quickly can we see a clear line of sight to get your money back. And then the other most important thing is we really do invest in the people. It is the people who are running the business that drives how excited we get about the business. Are they focused? Are they diligent? If you give them the money, are they not, you know, they're not going to go and build a new headquarters. They're actually going to reinvest it in the business. Have they taken any money? Those are the sort of things that we look for. Very focused, diligent entrepreneurs, and that's what we back. We back entrepreneurs to continue on their day jobs, to continue focusing on the operational side of things, and we bring finance to help them as well.
The entrepreneurship lecturer at Zenith University College asked a question about values and traits, if I got it right. In terms of the values that we bring to bear, we have a very strong focus.
we try to be dispassionate about the businesses. It's very easy to get carried away with an idea and believe in the idea when the numbers don't stack up. That's the one thing that is the most difficult thing, is to stick with the numbers. Because you might have a great idea, you read it in a book somewhere, somebody's come with an interesting idea, but the numbers don't stack up. One of the things that we look at is we won't invest in a business unless they go through a very thorough and detailed business plan. It's very easy for somebody to come across with a business idea and for them to expect money, but we firmly believe that by going through a very detailed business plan, and we have a template for that, it forces the entrepreneur to think about all the risks that exist. Another thing we look at is what sort of business it is. We tend not to invest in businesses which are trying to create a new marketplace. One of the things we find easier to do is if somebody has invested in a cheaper way of providing a service that people pay for already. So, you know, it's maybe it's an educational business. People always pay for extra lessons. If somebody comes up with an application to provide that, we look at something like that. You know, we're not trying to, it's difficult sometimes to try and create a new market, to educate people on a new market and then get returns. And sometimes it's just, you're an entrepreneur doing, you know, you have a little primary school and, you know, you've got fee-paying clients because the education in your area is not particularly good, or you have a little, one of the things, a little BISAP business, which is, you know, you're making it at home and you can, you know, have a decent return. Lots of little businesses that we look at, but it's about understanding your niche, being very good at what you do and having a product that is good. And actually, if there are barriers to entry, that makes it easier. Because if somebody can come along and replicate what you're doing, well, how much lead time do you have before all of a sudden you enter into a price war? And I'm not trying to say you should be doing one thing or another, but I'm saying that these are some of the things that we as investors think about when people bring us our ideas. You see lots of interesting ideas. We see lots of unrealistic valuations where somebody brings a plan to you and they expect you to invest on the basis of 5 years of perfect execution, present valued at some discount rates. And that essentially means that what they do is they say, oh, this is where I am today, I'm just starting. But in 5 years, it'll be worth a hell of a lot. So pay me a portion of what it'll be worth in 5 years at today's money. And I'm like, you know, you go and do 1 year first. When it's going, then we'll come alongside you. But before you've started. And I think the final thing I'd like to say is that when it comes to startup capital and seed capital, there are very few places to go apart from home or your own money. You know, expecting people to invest in your idea, we don't have that infrastructure or that environment in Ghana. Most
Venture
people,
capitalists, angel investors?
Most of them will only back something that's already going. So getting the idea off the ground, getting the business in place, having made some sales in whatever you're doing, tends to be the trigger for others to come in. So for a lot of people, it's friends and family, round 1, round 2 is where you're going to start and where you're going to get your money from before the big boys come in, because, you know, they want to get their money back and they want some certainty of getting their money back. And if you've got no clear line of sight of any sort of cash flow and you are hoping that if they give you money, you might be able to, you're not going to get money.
Final question. I think the gentleman was asking if you had worked at Ghana Stock Exchange, would you probably be here today?
I think I would, and he'll probably jump down my throat. But one of my classmates is actually the general manager of the stock exchange, and he has a very successful career doing that. So the answer is absolutely. The life experiences I've had have just given me a different dimension, but it's not much that I couldn't have gotten by reading a lot and by reading a lot, you know. And I really, really, honestly do believe, if I can be a little cheeky, what I will say is that 9 times out of 10, if you see somebody walking down the street with a book, it's either a religious book or it's a self-help book. And that's what you see when you see being sold at the roadsides. And I just do think that autobiographies, just people's life experiences, history books, seeing how things work, all those sort of things are very relevant experiences. And actually just finding out, you know, what have I read recently? I've read Bezos' book, Steve Jobs' book. I've read some philosophy books. I'm actually reading a book on African philosophy. I'm a big fan of we have such a richness of culture, and yet we strive to learn about others, and yet we have a huge richness of culture here. And so right now I'm reading a book on African philosophy and what the drivers are behind the thinking of our ancestors. Because, you know, where does your edge come from? If you're going to read what somebody else did in the West who's already invented things, well, where's your edge? There's none. But we have a richness of culture here, and there's very little attention being paid to, you know, how successful. You know, I think if you read in some books somewhere that actually the richest man in the world who ever lived was Mansa Musa. You know, and yet who knows much about him? Nobody. You know, so I'm like, why not? We should be leveraging off of our own history, our own culture, our own chiefs, and that's where we should get our edge from, I think.
We're going to go on our next batch of questions, and I think we'll take questions from the left side. But just before that, Mr. Agyare, are you disappointed that this economy, Ghana's economy, has been led by the services sector? I did hear you talk about investment in a farm. That's agriculture. Agriculture used to be the mainstay of this economy. It contributed greatly to our GDP. Agriculture over the past few years has gone down greatly, and we see the services sector taking over. Are you disappointed? Where are the jobs going to come from?
So, okay, now I have to be very clear here. All the views that I have are my own views. I don't represent government, I don't represent the state, I don't represent any company. Somewhere in the region of 50 to 60% of the working population in this country, their livelihood comes from agriculture in some shape or form. And yet our graduate output in agriculture is only 3%. There's a mismatch there. Now, if every farmer in this country was able to increase his yield by 20% and was able to employ one more person, we probably would have no unemployment in this country. So when you look at talking about the area of unemployment, I think that agriculture is a huge opportunity. Ghana's production of cocoa was somewhere in the region of 750,000 tons last year. It will grow to about 850,000 tons this year. Cocoa is traded about $2,200 a ton. So Ghana's total output is around $2 to $2.5 billion a year. Ferrero Rocher, total sales last year was $10 billion. The Mars family, total sales last year was about $30 billion. So you tell me where the opportunity lies. You know, there is no African brand of chocolate. There's no African brand of tea. There's no African brand of coffee. And yet we all wake up and we drink our Nescafes and we drink our Liptons. You know, these are opportunities that exist that nobody's taking advantage of, in my estimation. And they're all sitting there waiting for somebody, some entrepreneur to get up and build a brand and take these things. You know, you travel around and lemongrass. You live abroad and they charge you a fortune for lemongrass that we have to cut because it grows in the wild. So there are lots of opportunities in agricultural space if you look at it as a business, as opposed to I have to go and break my back and take a whole. I mean, even the whole thing about, you know, how do you increase productivity? I mean, you know, as was pointed out to me quite recently, you know, the hoe is an instrument that was invented 3,000 years ago, and we're still using it today. You know, can't anybody come up with a better way of tilling the land, a better way of increasing the yields, a better way? All of these things are opportunities. Not everybody has to go to college, do a degree in business management, and wear a suit and a tie and work at one of our good banks at the back there.
All right, so our next batch of questions.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
My name is Justice Osgood Apia. I'm a student of Wisconsin University. Per your introduction, you are an entrepreneur, you are an investor, you are a coach, and all of that. I want to know if you are married. If yes, for how long, and how do you combine your family with your work?
All right, our next question.
Hello, sir. My name is David Oderson from Wisconsin University, 400 level. Industrialization is as important as agriculture. And then I would like to find out if you have any criteria or any interest in investing in industrialization.
I'm Christian Atipo from Wisconsin. I would like to know if you think that the retail stock trading and retail forex trading can be an opportunity for young graduates to have a substantial income in the face of unemployment in Ghana.
All right, thank you very much. Kindly pass the microphone to the back. We'll take our next set of questions from the back. Mr. Agyare, you can answer these questions.
Okay. And I can't remember who made the quote, but another one of my favorite quotes is, "No one ever lay on their deathbed wishing they spent more time at work." Family life is incredibly important. And for those of us who are married, if your home life is stable, it gives you the opportunity to go out and forage and take risk and look for work because you're coming home coming to a stable home. So the answer is yes. How do we balance it? I think she works harder than I do. So the question is almost the other way around: is how often do I get to see her? But no, I think relationships are particularly challenging, but the way you deal with relationships is communication. I think a lot of people are surprised at how much interest the other half would take in what they do, and how much the other half would be supportive if you are prepared to share some of the risks that you're taking or you want to take. We have lived in a traditionally male-dominated environment where the man is a hunter-gatherer and the woman stays at home, and the world has changed. And the reality is it's about sharing, it's about treating each other as equals. And sharing doesn't mean, coming home and handing over a bit of money. Sharing means sitting down and having open and honest conversations about what you're doing, because together there are risks that you might be. Sometimes you watch it, you see people sitting there and there. Share it, see what happens, And so that is incredibly important, but balance is even more important. Missing that school, that sports day, missing that parent-teacher because you have to work. Sometimes you don't. And the reality is that finding the right balance takes time. Communication is particularly important. And I think that if you can do both, it makes the risk that you're taking a lot more bearable, rather than you being on your own and sitting there and not discussing with anybody. Industrialization, investing in industrialization is all about returns, but also getting the right balance. One of the challenges of industrialization, and we've looked at businesses where absolutely you can get a slightly better return by industrializing. But if you're working in a community where if you do less industrialization, you can employ more people, then you have to get the balance right, especially in the agricultural sector, where going low tech means you can employ more people. So industrialization is important. Industrialization is important for value addition. You can export raw and get X. If you process, you can get 3X. If you can find an international market, you can get 5X. So the reality is that I'm absolutely supportive of industrialization, but also making sure that you're not just doing it for doing its sake because somebody has brought a factory. It's because you can see that there's a really high return associated with it. So yes, absolutely. And I'm a trader. I'm a derivatives trader by background. And when it comes to trading foreign exchange, my question always remains is that whatever you're going to go into, what is your edge? What is it? What set of information are you going to rely on which will allow you to beat the market? Because the market theoretically should know everything. And when it comes to things like foreign exchange, where large flows are controlled by large institutions, and you might think you have an inside knowledge, but guess what? A particular flow, cocoa was sold yesterday and all cargo came in. Sitting there, you get buffeted by the waves. So in my personal opinion, I think that you might be able to make a decent return, but you have a lot of volatility along the way. And if you can stomach the volatility, then please go ahead, but you will make big profits, big losses, big profits, big losses. And if you're a student on a small budget, I would just be a little concerned, that's all.
Quick questions. We've got just about 6 minutes to wrap up. Peterson Adi says, I'm watching live from Accra, Newtown.
Yep.
Nice show setup. Keep it up. I just love time with the captains. Akosha says, do you believe in hedging as a solution to the frequent shocks that occur in the world of commodities? And is that an option you'd suggest to the current finance minister? And this final one from Kofi says, how do we resolve the unemployment challenge?
I mean, hedging is a name that has got a very bad rep in this country for historical reasons. Hedging is a natural tool of managing the volatility of your returns. The price of cocoa from July 2016 to date has fallen by 40%. If we had hedged, we'd have a lot more revenue. If you go to Ivory Coast, the government is facing a shortfall of $500 million because people who committed to buy cocoa at 3,000 have walked away and it's now trading at 2,200. So the reality is that hedging is an absolutely necessary financial tool.
Would you suggest that to the finance minister?
I think they're already looking at it. I don't need to suggest it to him, but absolutely, you know. And you know, one of my day jobs is as a non-executive director of Tullow Oil, and you know, we have a publicly available hedging policy that sits on our website. We hedge 50% of next year's production, 30% of the year after, and 20% of the year after, and you know, we've done that for years. So once you have a clearly stated policy, it's agreed by the board and then it's executed by the executives, the answer is yes, absolutely. It's an absolute.
How do we deal with the challenge of unemployment?
Well, it depends on how you measure unemployment. I believe that, you know, the unemployment numbers mask the fact that a lot of us are entrepreneurs working for ourselves and not formally registered in the system. So the number of people who are actually sitting at home and doing nothing is far lower than the unemployment number. And I do think that the challenge of unemployment is twofold. One, if the economy grows, more people will be employed, and that's one responsibility for those who are in power. The second thing is responsibility on ourselves to ensure that we have the right skills to take advantage of the opportunities that exist. And the reality is if you're not getting them from the college course that you're doing, you know, you can do an online course in almost anything. You know, everybody talks about setting up apps. There are I checked before I came, there are 4,000 courses online today to learn how to code. You can do it in your spare time. So there's no reason why any one of you shouldn't be sitting here and be able to code and write your own application if you come up with a good idea. There's no reason for that not to happen. So you have to take some, you know, take some of it upon yourselves. And then I think finally, when it comes to unemployment, if there were a bunch of employers here, some of them will say that when you ask people to come in to write their CVs, to put these things, there's not enough being done by the colleges to prepare the students for the real world, to prepare them to be able to, you know, ultimately it's not what you've learned, it's what the employer wants. And matching up those two is where the real challenge lies, the extent to which there are employers out there who are looking for people. And that's what we really need to focus on, making sure that, you know, we have
industry and academia.
Yeah, well, we have a country, you know, the country has a business plan. What falls out of the business plan are skills requirements. You have to match those skills requirements with the educational system. And making sure that what the educational system is providing is the same as what the country requires.
And we really don't have that at the moment, do we?
Well, I think there's an imbalance and it needs to be addressed.
Right. We're hard pressed for time. I don't know if I go to my investment bankers, Ben and the representatives from the other investment banks. Do you have a question for us? Yeah, sure.
My name is Nanefo. I work with UT Bank as a strategy analyst. I actually have 3 questions for you. The first is, at what point can a startup make a pitch to an investor? The second is there any platform currently here in Ghana that helps startups to be efficiently prepared to, say, pitch to an investor? Then my third question is with regard to your first presentation earlier. You made mention that with regard to your investment decisions, you are not necessarily inclined to being socially responsible. You're looking more at the returns and what has been overlooked. So I want to know exactly what is in your investment company's corporate governance structure, anything that seeks to ensure that whatever investments you're making have sustainable principles imbibed in them.
Thank you very much, our lady from UT. Mr. Agyare, you've got 1 minute to make this all up.
I think that, I mean, our company is regulated by the FCA, which is the UK regulatory authorities, and they're very strict guidelines of what we can and cannot do. When I talk about social responsibility is going after below market returns in order to help bunches of people. We don't look at that. Other people that we know look at that. At what point in time does a startup be able to go and get money? When they have a clear line of sight as to receiving cash flow. It's not just an idea, it's a real business with a real product which is being sold. Then I think you can go to somebody and say, guess what? If you give me money, this is how you get your money back. I think that's when it's available. And other platforms, I think there are quite a few platforms. There's MES, there's iHub. There are quite a few platforms. I mean, I've got a list here, but I've only got a minute. But there are quite a few platforms in Ghana now which will enable you, prepare you, host you with your startup. But I think you also need to get yourself to a point where it's not just an idea and a place to go and sit and have coffee and drink tea and play games, but actually think it through, have a business plan, clear line of sight of revenues, and take it from there.
Show him some love, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Mr. Tutu Agyare, Managing Partner for Nubuke LLP. He's been our captain for the month of April. We're extremely delighted to have you here. We know you're catching a flight to London for a board meeting tomorrow, and you still made time to be with us here tonight. Thank you so much, Mr. Agyare, for your time. And thank you so much, all of you from Wisconsin University, as well as Zenith University College, and also to our investment bankers from UT Bank, also from First Bank Financial Services and Macaulay Investments. Thank you also for being with us here tonight. And for those of you, our viewers at home on Facebook and on Twitter who shared your comments with us, I know we've been streaming live on Facebook. Lots of views coming in. Thank you so much. Also, just to remind you that after the show, we've got souvenirs from Nubuke LLP. They're going to be giving each one of you a souvenir. Please, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together one more time. All right, so that's all for our show for the month of April. We're back in May with another big bang. We've got a big captain coming up in the month of May. My name is Spark Sorry. Thanks so much to my producers, to the technical team, to all of you who made this happen. God willing, same time next month, we'll see you again.